Now, Britain has much tougher controls than Australia, believe it or not. It used to have weaker ones, but as I said earlier, Prime Minister Boris Johnson overnight said people must stay at home, and this is for essential shopping, essential work, medical care. You're allowed to exercise once, and outside the home, no more than 2 people at a time. And that may be our future as well. The Health Minister today was not ruling that out.
Could stage 2 potentially involve, and is lockdown later than stage 2?
So stage 2, I will respectfully leave that to the medical expert panel, which is working on that. But there are a series of gradations here, which is about progressive social isolation, where we believe that that is required. But above all else, people don't need to wait.
The New South Wales Premier, though, seems very keen to go further.
We can tell from our numbers, and they're going up quite significantly every day, but many countries did not take some of the actions this early on in the process in order to control the spread. And I don't want to be another example of a jurisdiction that didn't do what it needed to do at the right time.
So that could be our future coming that we see in London. Joining me from London, Skype has let us down, so he's on the line, is John McTernan, a former senior advisor to both British Prime Minister Tony Blair and Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard. John, it's great to talk to you again. Now, Boris Johnson, he wasn't keen initially on imposing controls like this at first. This seems a big backflip. Why do you think it's occurred?
I think he's seen just how fast exponential growth really is, and he's in London. He's in number 10 Downing Street in Westminster, and central London is the heart of the pandemic in the UK. London hospitals are starting to strain already, and London's had more than half of the deaths, even though we're a sixth of the population of the country. So I think it's right on his doorstep, and you're absolutely right. Boris Johnson definitely was reluctant to use the power of the state, and I think that was one of his mistakes, and he is... He's not so much backflipped as fast-forwarded. I think he thought he might have to get here by Easter, but he should probably have been here last week or the week before, because we've had the same kind of crowds that were on Bondi. We had crowds going to national parks and beaches in Britain last weekend, which was sunny for Britain.
Yeah, well, so I think it's the same story as here, actually, John. It's like the government is relying on people to do the right thing. The people aren't doing the right thing, or not enough of them, and so the government is stepping in with the big arm of the law, which is really unfortunate. How long do you think these controls in Britain will last? Because they will have a devastating impact on the economy.
So these controls... Boris Johnson again tried to talk lightly about it, said they'd be reviewed in 3 weeks. Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, effectively the Premier of Scotland, she said this is for 3 weeks at least, and I think that's the situation. I can imagine this carrying on for 3 months, because once these are in place, the government will not want to relax them, because it has seen what the behaviour of people is if they're not forced to do the right thing. And that's, I suspect, we're going to go tighter. In France, you can't go cycling, you can't go running out on the street. We're still allowed to go out to exercise once a day. I think that will be clamped down by the end of the week, if not by the end of the day, because this thing is fast-moving, and every time Boris Johnson reverses himself, he goes fast. He goes much faster, and I can imagine this happening in Australia too, because Australians are not that different from British people.
Very much so, John. Just lastly, I mean, perhaps it's far too soon to look ahead politically, but Boris Johnson obviously had an instinctive dislike of using state power like this, virtually keeping people prisoner in their own homes. How do you see long-term this crisis changing the world?
So I think the first thing is government is back, the state is back. The state is back in your social life, telling you how you stay in your house. The state is back in your economic life. It's supporting businesses and it's supporting your actual wages. I think that means there will be, as there was after the Second World War, a turn to more state intervention, and it's likely it'll be left of centre rather than Liberal and Conservative parties who benefit from that. And I think there's going to be a huge demand from the public that the businesses which are bailed out with our money have to pay back to the country, have to pay back to the community. And I think that is going to be a huge question, how they do that, or whether they'll have to be made to do that. And the final thing is, I think there will be a lot of investigation after the event as to how we were so unprepared for a global pandemic, since there have been pandemics coming through the globe for the last couple of decades. And I think that will ask some searching questions about how decisions are made at the highest level and what considerations people in government are making about making these decisions.
You couldn't be more right there, John. I think particularly when you know that out there will be pandemics even more severe than this, far more severe.
Yep.
We have to treat this as a practice, obviously an emergency now, but a practice run for the really big one to come.
Yep.
John McTernan, thank you so much indeed. Great to talk to you.